The night sky over the Caribbean was silent, except for the faint hum of engines cutting through the darkness. At 30,000 feet, a massive C-17 Globemaster carried inside it something that would change the course of history in Latin America. On its steel floor sat rows of hardened men, elite soldiers of the United States Special Operations Command, their eyes sharp, their rifles gleaming under dim red cabin lights. The mission had been given a single name, Operation Iron Dagger. For decades, the Venezuelan cartels had grown into a monstrous empire. They no longer just smuggled cocaine and weapons, they controlled cities, corrupted governments, and terrorized families across South America. They had armies, tanks, and even foreign mercenaries at their disposal. But the straw that broke the camel's back was when one cartel boss ordered the brutal execution of 3 American aid workers who had come to help rebuild schools in Caracas. The United States could no longer stand idle. At the Pentagon, after weeks of intelligence briefings and satellite surveillance, the president signed the order. This wasn't going to be another shadow war fought quietly through proxies. No, this was different. This was a decapitation strike, a full-scale mission to erase the cartels forever. The C-17 hit turbulence, but the men inside didn't flinch. Among them sat Captain Ryan Mitchell, a 12-year veteran of the Green Berets. His face was battle-hardened, with a scar running across his cheek, a reminder from a mission in Afghanistan years ago. Beside him, Sergeant Diaz, a Cuban-American fluent in Spanish, checked his gear and whispered a silent prayer. Ryan looked at his men. Each of them had left families behind, wives, children, parents who had no idea what these soldiers were about to walk into. He cleared his throat, his voice cutting through the drone of the engines. Listen up, we are not just fighting an enemy tonight. We are fighting an empire that has poisoned generations with drugs, violence, and corruption. These cartels think they own Venezuela. Tonight, we prove them wrong. The men nodded silently. The red light above the ramp door flickered. Meanwhile, deep inside Venezuela, in the mountains outside Maracaibo, a fortress stood. It was no ordinary hideout. It was a small city built by blood money. Armored SUVs lined the courtyards, drones buzzed overhead, and armed men patrolled with assault rifles. At the center of it all was Javier Montoya, the most feared cartel leader in the hemisphere. Montoya wasn't just a drug lord. He was a warlord. With his gold rings, slick black hair, and cold eyes, he commanded tens of thousands of men. He had politicians in his pocket, generals under his payroll, and a private army larger than some national militaries. On his desk lay a satellite phone. A mercenary commander from Eastern Europe had just given him chilling news. The Americans are coming.
Montoya laughed, sipping whiskey. Let them come. This is Venezuela, my land. My men know these jungles better than any foreign soldier. The Americans will drown in blood before they take me. But even as he spoke, there was unease in his eyes. For the first time in years, he felt a shadow of fear. Back in the Caribbean, the strike force was vast. Aircraft carriers moved silently across international waters. Stealth bombers stood ready in the sky. Drones hovered, gathering live intel. This wasn't just a mission, it was a show of force. At dawn, the first wave hit. Cruise missiles screamed across the skies, slamming into cartel airstrips, fuel depots, and armored convoys. Fire lit up the horizon as shockwaves thundered across the mountains. Montoya's empire shook violently. His men panicked. Radios crackled with chaos. Nos atacan. The Americans are here. In the capital, civilians awoke to the sound of explosions. Some cheered, some screamed, but all knew something historic was happening. Captain Ryan's team parachuted into the dense Venezuelan jungle. The canopy swallowed them, branches whipping against their gear as they hit the ground and rolled into cover. Silence returned, broken only by the rustle of leaves and distant gunfire. Move out, Ryan whispered, his night vision goggles glowing green. Their objective was clear: infiltrate Montoya's stronghold, capture or kill him, and dismantle the heart of the cartel. But Montoya had anticipated this. His jungle was laced with traps, his men hidden in shadows, waiting. The Americans advanced cautiously. A twig snapped, a burst of gunfire erupted from the treeline. The jungle exploded in violence. The firefight was brutal. Bullets tore through leaves, dirt sprayed into the air, and men shouted in English and Spanish. Ryan's squad returned fire, their training giving them the edge. One by one, cartel gunmen dropped. But the numbers were overwhelming. A grenade detonated nearby, throwing Sergeant Diaz to the ground. Ryan dragged him behind a tree, blood streaming from Diaz's arm. Stay with me, Diaz. Ryan shouted. The radio crackled. Eagle 1, this is command. Reinforcements inbound. Hold position. But Ryan knew reinforcements were far away. It was just them, surrounded, outnumbered, deep in enemy territory. And Montoya wasn't going to run. Not yet. He wanted to crush them with his own hands. From a balcony in his fortress, Montoya lit a cigar and watched the jungle burn. He smiled. Let the Americans come. Tonight, I will bury them in Venezuela. The jungle erupted into chaos. As the night vision goggles lit up the terrain, green silhouettes of cartel fighters darted between trees, trying to mount a counterattack. But the U.S. Special Forces were already entrenched. Their plan wasn't just to destroy, it was to eliminate the command structure of the cartels permanently. Black Hawk helicopters hovered low, their rotors sending shockwaves through the humid Venezuelan night. Rangers rappelled down, securing the perimeter. Drones buzzed overhead, feeding live surveillance to command posts offshore. The first wave of airstrikes had already cratered cartel airstrips, torching hangars and blowing apart planes used for drug smuggling. Without air mobility, the cartels were crippled. But the fight was far from over. Their jungle strongholds were still intact, protected by layers of bunkers, hidden tunnels, and fortified compounds. Eagle 1 to command, Captain Harrison's voice cut through the comms. Perimeter secured. Moving to Phase 2. Phase 2 was the most dangerous. Direct engagement inside cartel territory. The soldiers advanced, their boots sinking into mud. Every step was a risk. Landmines, tripwires, ambushes. Suddenly, a deafening explosion ripped through the left flank. Dirt and fire shot into the sky. Screams filled the radio. "They're using IEDs," shouted Sergeant Morales, pulling two wounded men behind cover. But the Americans were prepared. Counter-drone systems jammed cartel drones overhead, while K-9 units sniffed out hidden explosives. Step by step, bunker by bunker, they pushed forward. Inside the cartel's main fortress, Diego Vargas, one of the most feared cartel leaders in South America, watched the chaos unfold on his monitors. His empire was burning, and for the first time in years, he felt fear. "We must hold the compound," Vargas roared at his men. "If they break through here, everything is lost." His men were heavily armed, RPGs, machine guns, even stolen military vehicles. They had sworn loyalty to the cartel, but now that loyalty was being tested by the relentless assault of America's most elite warriors. By dawn, the battlefield had shifted. The U.S. forces had carved a path to the compound gates. Tanks rolled in, flattening barricades. Snipers took positions on ridgelines, picking off cartel fighters before they could mount RPGs. The fight reached its peak inside the fortress. Door-to-door combat raged. Grenades exploded in narrow hallways. Every room was a death trap. But the Americans fought with precision, moving like shadows, their discipline overwhelming the chaotic resistance of the cartel soldiers. At last, Captain